Joey, look, I'm making a video. What? He's gonna lose his mind. Hey guys, it's Richard, Dude 1 here from Two Dudes, One Double Feature. For any of you watching who doesn't really know what Two Dudes, One Double Feature is, it's a podcast that I do every single Friday with my friend Joey, who is Dude 2. We talk about two movies, we record the episode, put it on SoundCloud, which takes it to iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. We have great music from John and Kenny Armstrong. We do little radio dramas every now and then. We did a really good one all through Halloween, and we do all different things. We have this YouTube channel. We're all over the place. And it would mean a great deal to us if you check out our show. Links for everything are down below. For those of you who've listened to the show, you probably know that me, Richard, Dude 1, this guy right here, has a lot of cinematic blind spots. Okay, pause for a second. What is this face? I look like I'm about to either take you on a really uncomfortable date or I'm about to eat you. I am so sorry you have to see that. I mean, I guess if I had to explain why, it's just I'm picky. I know what I like. I guess I just gravitate towards things that I'm comfortable with, you know? Like, you know, I know I'm comfortable with, like, Batman 89, so I'll watch that consistently. That isn't to say that I haven't opened myself to, I need to have words come out of my mouth, not gibberish. That's not to say that I don't have some openness. Like, I don't just stick to what I know and like. I do try to open myself up to new experiences. And that's one of my favorite things about doing the podcast and, you know, doing stuff with Joey is that, you know, he's sort of like a film historian. He watches and sees everything. He's got a much more open palette than I do. But basically, that's one of my favorite things about the show is that it gives Joey and myself opportunities to share experiences with the other person with movies neither person would have ever seen had we not been doing a podcast to begin with. And it's sort of become like a mission for Joey, really, just to, you know, introduce me to all these movies that are almost like quintessential. We actually just we're actually in the middle of doing an episode where we're actually showing each other types of movies, and it's a Western episode. And speaking of genres in general, the one genre I've really been getting into a lot over the past decade really is kaiju films. I've had some experience with giant monster movies in my life, movies like Godzilla 98 and Peter Jackson's King Kong and a few other things. Power Rangers is very much, I feel like, in that ballpark to a degree. I mean, when each episode ends with the frickin', you know, villain of the week turning into a giant monster and then the Megazord showing up, even the fact that that whole portion of the episode is filmed a lot like old school kaiju films, I think it counts. I don't know where it lies with most people that like this genre, but I think it counts. No, I mean, in all honesty, though, I do have some experience, but most of my desire for more of these types of movies came over the last 10 years. Movies like Pacific Rim, which is one of my all-time favorite movies now, and the MonsterVerse movies, which I grew to love. And also just the past few months of Joey just going on and on and on about Godzilla vs. Kong. I get it, you love the movie. In all seriousness, I really enjoyed it too, but for him it was like Anton Ego eating the ratatouille and then just being transported to his childhood. Joey would say that himself. In fact, he said that to me, and that's where I got this explanation from. And I love that, honestly. Joey's a very quiet, sort of stoic, I guess, kind of guy. And so when he sort of gets, like, giddy about something, I get sort of excited about it. So I'm like, huh. But with all this talk of Godzilla vs. Kong and just Godzilla in general, it felt the right time to finally watch a lot of these old school kaiju movies, specifically Godzilla, right? Godzilla is the absolute number one, most iconic kaiju in all of cinema. And he's been around since the early 50s. This guy has gone from the early 50s all the way to now. He's lasted that long. So he must be someone people love. Oh my God, who's messaging me? Joey just messaged me telling me that he's talking to his girlfriend. Thank you for reminding me that not only do I have to turn my phone on vibrate, but that I'm alone! So with all this talk of the giant monster movies and Godzilla and whatnot, I thought it was time to finally sit down and get some experience in this ballpark. And thankfully, the great people at the Criterion Collection released this monstrosity. Look at this thing. It doesn't even fit in the frame. I have to lean back. And I'm probably out of focus now. This is the 1,000th spine-numbered Criterion release. It's the entire Showa-era. This thing is massive. It's got, like, it's basically a giant book. And it has all these different pieces of art representing all the different Godzilla releases, like King Kong versus Godzilla, Mothra versus Godzilla, Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, Astro Monster, Ibara, you know, the whole... you got the gist of it. And on the last page here, the entire Showa-era collection of Godzilla films with the original film, and then all the other films are sort of doubled in like 2 to 3 movies per disc. But again, with all this talk, and especially with the Godzilla vs. Kong stuff, I felt now was the time to watch these movies. And now that I've done that, how do I say this? I don't know what Godzilla fandom is like, so I do apologize if I upset you with what I'm about to say. I feel like it was a waste of time. And it was at that moment that young Richard would lose his life. Rest in peace. When I say that, context is needed. Because I don't hate these movies. In fact, there's quite a few of them I very much enjoyed. But there were factors that came into play that sort of made going through, binging these movies, a chore. I'm so sorry. I mean, it's my opinion. I'm sorry if it upsets you, but we are where we are. In all seriousness, there was a real sense of repetition with these movies. All these movies were sort of the same plot retooled or reworked somehow, with a few different changes here and there. Like Aliens. Aliens hate Godzilla. Either they're trying to take over his mind or they're trying to kill him, and it's happened so many times. I would probably, if I was going to be recommending anyone watch these movies for themselves, watch the original and then 1 or 2 of the sequel films. That's my opinion. But again, having said all of that, there were a lot of movies that I did like, and ultimately I did have some fun watching these movies. The biggest thing these movies reminded me of is like any other horror movie franchise. So I don't feel like it's an entirely bad thing to say any of that. I feel like it's sort of par for the course, really. Like, I love Nightmare on Elm Street. It's on top of my other shelf right over here off camera. The original movie, I love Freddy Krueger, but a lot of the sequels are terrible, and a lot of the sequels are kind of the same movie. I think the one thing Godzilla has over something like Nightmare on Elm Street, or probably other horror movie franchises that I've seen, is that I probably liked more of the movies in this set than I did in any other franchise set. Like, the standouts for me would probably be Mothra versus Godzilla for one. The moment 2 small ladies showed up, like, it was everything playing in my head was a combination of having just watched Little Women for the podcast and Sweeney Todd for the podcast. And so when the tiny women like showed up in the movie that were like Mothra's guardians or whatever, or Mothra's keepers or whatever, my first thought was Little Women. That was so stupid. It was so stupid. But no, it was a really good movie, actually. And I also really liked Godzilla vs. Ghidorah. That movie was doing what I'd been wanting these movies to do as I was going through them, because it condensed it down to just Godzilla and another monster. Really did a great job on the kaiju cinematography aspect, and it had an interesting story, and the monster fights were just so good. And I also like some of the zanier ones, like the Astro Monster, Destroy All Monsters. I like the Mecha Godzilla ones. I liked Ibra, Horror of the Deep was kind of a wild one. That one probably has the best shot of all the post-original Godzilla films to sort of illustrate how massive these monsters are compared to the humans. It's a shot when Ibra's claw is coming out of the water, and then at the very forefront of the camera, you have the boat, and it looks haunting with the rain and everything. It's so good. And on the note of the monster fights, even though there were definitely some movies in this series that I either didn't care for or outright sucked, if there was one consistently good and exciting thing about all these movies, it was by far the monster stuff. I mean, that's what you watch these movies for, right? You watch them because there's a dude in a suit crushing some miniatures and fighting another dude in a suit, and you're having a ball watching it. No, without a doubt, that was always the best part. So whenever that happened, I was definitely on board. But then there was times where I just was so bored. I was like, okay, the humans are doing things, cool, whatever. But when the monster showed up, I'm like, okay, I'm happy now. Though oddly enough, Godzilla reminded me a lot of Batman. But specifically, the way that the 90s era of Batman films sort of treated Batman as kind of a secondary character. There were plenty of times in these films where Godzilla sort of just shows up even though there was no build-up for it. Like, oh yeah, they're Godzilla movies. But when he showed up, I still loved him. Especially with Terror of Mechagodzilla. Towards the end of the movie, sort of like that third act, and Godzilla shows up for the last 20 minutes, and that super epic intro shot and the music from the original film blasts. And then he comes in and starts fighting the like sea monster looking thing in Gigan. That was good stuff. And speaking of the original, that's still the best one of all these movies. That's one of the best movies, in all honesty. And again, like horror movie franchises, the first one was the best one, and then the rest of the movies were sort of a mixture of good, decent, meh, or get it out of my face. But even though that was very much the case with Godzilla, the Showa-era, there was a lot worth enjoying. It had a lot of charm to it, and I had fun, even if it was very repetitive and it was a waste of time. If I'm being honest, I would probably watch Godzilla, where are you at? I'd probably watch Mothra vs. Godzilla, Godzilla vs. Hedorah, Ibra, Horror of the Deep, but I probably won't sit and binge watch these movies, at least not anytime soon. But I guess the real question, will I do more? Will I go forward? Because there are plenty more Godzilla movies after this era. And the answer is a solid yes. Because I am actually really curious to see how the technology evolved with these movies. And I'm very curious to see, how this character has evolved over the eras. Anyways, guys, what are some cinematic blind spots that you have? What are some movies that you just haven't gotten around to yet, but you want to get around to it? Also, what are your thoughts on just Godzilla movies in general? Kaiju films? What are some of your favorite franchises? New or old? Let me know as well. And if you like the video, click it, the thumb, click that thumb. It helps us out a lot. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, click the notification bell. Please check out the podcast. We have an episode every Friday, and you will see Joey next with his next video. Bye, guys!